What would you do if you discovered that the person you trust most was watching your every move? Jonathan Carter, a billionaire who had lost faith in humanity, decided to test his new housekeeper in the cruelest way possible. He pretended to sleep, left money out in the open expecting her to steal it. But when he opened his eyes, what he saw wasn't theft. It was something that would change his frozen heart forever. But what happened next, no one there could have imagined. If you're already curious about this story, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments. Where are you listening to this story from? Your support is what keeps this channel alive, bringing you stories that touch the heart. Morning arrived quietly at the Carter mansion, just as it had for years. The sun filtered through Italian silk curtains, but seemed unable to warm the white marble hallways that echoed only with the measured sound of Jonathan Carter's footsteps. At 38, he had built an empire that few men could ever dream of, but he had also built walls around his heart that seemed impossible to break through. Jonathan stopped in front of the entrance hall mirror, adjusting his Italian tie with precise mechanical movements. The reflection staring back at him was that of a successful man. Dark hair perfectly styled, a custom-made suit that cost more than a regular car, and grey eyes that had once been warm but now seemed made of ice. Carter Enterprises dominated sectors in technology, real estate and finance, and his name was synonymous with ruthless success. But the price of that achievement had been far too high. "Mr. Carter," Margaret's voice, his personal secretary, echoed through the intercom. "The new candidate will arrive in an hour for the interview." Jonathan sighed, a look of weariness crossing his sculpted face. This was the 14th housekeeper candidate in 6 months. Each of the previous ones had been fired for reasons ranging from petty theft to basic incompetence. Or at least that's how he justified their dismissals. The truth, which he would never admit, was that he couldn't trust anyone enough to allow them to stay in his home. "Very well, Margaret. And this time, make sure she understands the rules. No exceptions, no second chances." Walking through the house, Jonathan felt the weight of the silence that had become his constant companion. Every room was decorated with expensive art pieces and furniture that seemed to have come straight from the pages of an architecture magazine. But something that money couldn't buy was missing: life. The gourmet kitchen was rarely used for more than heating up food delivered from expensive restaurants. The living room, with its Italian leather armchairs, remained empty most of the time. Even his bedroom, with its king-size bed and panoramic city view, felt more like a luxury hotel than a home. Everything had changed 5 years ago, when Marcus Dunning, his best friend and business partner since college, had stolen over $10 million from the company and fled to some tax haven. It hadn't just been about the money, although the amount was substantial. What had really broken something inside Jonathan was the betrayal by someone he trusted like a brother. "How could I have been so blind?" he murmured to himself, a question that haunted him during sleepless nights. Since then, Jonathan had developed a simple philosophy: trust no one, expect betrayal from everyone, and never let anyone get close enough to hurt him again. He had fired employees for minimal mistakes, broken contracts with partners over unfounded suspicions, and turned his home into a fortress where only he was allowed to exist completely. The phone rang, interrupting his dark thoughts. It was David Richardson, his lawyer and one of the few men who still dared to speak frankly with him. "Jonathan, you need to stop firing housekeepers every 2 weeks. It's starting to look like a problematic pattern. David, I pay you to handle legal matters, not to give advice about my personal life." "But that's exactly what I'm talking about. If you keep this up, one of these women might sue you for wrongful termination. You need to find someone and give that person a real chance." Jonathan ended the call more abruptly than necessary. David was right, of course, but admitting that would mean admitting that maybe the problem wasn't the housekeepers, but himself. As he walked through his office, his eyes landed on the framed photo on his desk, the only personal photo he kept visible. It was an image of him in his early 20s, embracing Marcus during a business trip. Both were smiling genuinely, full of dreams and confidence in the future. Jonathan picked up the frame, his fingers tracing the cold glass. "You taught me well, Marcus," he whispered bitterly. "You taught me that even the best friends can become the worst enemies." The sound of the doorbell echoed through the house, announcing the new candidate's arrival. Jonathan put the photo away in the drawer, as he always did when receiving visitors, and took a deep breath. Another interview, another opportunity to confirm that his distrust was justified, another proof that he was right to keep everyone at a distance. He adjusted his shirt cuffs and assumed his ruthless CEO posture. Whoever this new candidate was, she wouldn't be different from the others. She would try to impress him, lie about her qualifications, and eventually reveal her true intentions. And when that happened, Jonathan would be ready. After all, a man who had survived his best friend's betrayal could certainly handle another dishonest housekeeper. Or at least that's what he tried to believe as he headed toward the door, never imagining that his life was about to change in ways he could never predict. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 o'clock, a punctuality that Jonathan silently appreciated. He adjusted his tie one last time before walking to the front door, mentally preparing himself for another interview that would end in disappointment. His expectations were so low they were practically underground. When he opened the door, however, Jonathan needed a moment to process what he was seeing. Before him stood a woman of about 30, with light brown hair pulled back in a messy bun, from which some rebellious strands escaped gracefully. She wore a simple navy blue dress, practical low-heeled shoes, and carried a purse that had clearly seen better days. But it wasn't her modest appearance that caught him off guard. It was the genuine smile that lit up her entire face. "Mr. Carter, I'm Lily Jefferson," she said, extending her hand with natural confidence. "Sorry if I'm running a few minutes late. I had a little argument with my car's GPS. Apparently it has its own ideas about what the best route is." Jonathan shook her hand, noticing how warm and firm it was, very different from the hesitant handshakes he was used to receiving. "You're not late. Please come in." As he led her through the entrance hall, Jonathan discreetly observed how Lily looked around. Most of the previous candidates had been visibly intimidated by the mansion's opulence, stammering comments about how everything was beautiful or impressive. Lily, however, seemed genuinely curious rather than intimidated. "Wow, this staircase is gorgeous," she commented, lightly touching the mahogany banister. "I bet you've gone down it at least once pretending to be from Gone with the Wind, haven't you?" The question caught Jonathan completely off guard. For a moment he almost smiled, vaguely remembering having done exactly that as a child in another house long ago. But he quickly composed his professional mask. "Let's go to the office," he said, leading her down a long hallway. Jonathan's office was designed to intimidate, dark, formal, with an imposing desk and chairs that seemed to have come from a courtroom. He gestured for her to sit in the chair designated for visitors while he took his position behind the desk, a psychological tactic that always worked. "So, Miss Jefferson," he began, consulting the resume Margaret had prepared. "I see your previous experience was as a waitress?" "That's right. At the Sunnyside Diner downtown. 3 years serving coffee and chatting with people from all walks of life," Lily replied, apparently not feeling diminished by the question. "Before that, I worked at a laundromat, and before the laundromat, I helped take care of my grandmother until she passed away." "And what makes you think you're qualified to work in a house like this?" The question came out harsher than Jonathan intended. Lily tilted her head slightly, as if she were considering the question with real seriousness. "Well, Mr. Carter, I'd say working at the diner taught me to be efficient under pressure, to pay attention to details because, believe me, people notice when you forget they asked for extra sugar, and to treat every person with respect, regardless of how much money they have in their pocket." She paused, fidgeting with her purse strap. "As for taking care of my grandmother, that taught me that a home isn't about how expensive the things inside it are. It's about making people feel safe and cared for." Jonathan felt something strange stir in his chest, a sensation he had long forgotten how to interpret. "And you have a child, I see here." "I do. Emma, she's 6. Lily's face immediately lit up. She's everything to me." "And where would she stay while you work here?" "With the babysitter, Miss Rose. She takes care of Emma after school and during the summer. She's a wonderful woman who lives in the same building as us." Jonathan made some notes more out of habit than necessity. "And the child's father?" The question made Lily's smile falter for an instant, but she recovered quickly. "He's not part of our lives. It's just me and Emma, and that's fine by both of us." There was something about the way she said it, without bitterness, without self-pity, just a simple statement of fact, that intrigued Jonathan. Most people in similar situations would become defensive or try to gain sympathy. Lily simply accepted the situation and moved on. "Why do you want this job specifically?" he asked. "Honestly? Because I need a stable job that pays well. I have a daughter to raise, and I want to give her opportunities I never had." Lily looked directly into his eyes, but also because, well, this house seems sad, and houses shouldn't be sad no matter how beautiful they are. The observation hit Jonathan like a punch to the stomach. No one had ever described his house as sad, although that's exactly what it was. "Interesting perspective," he murmured. "Sorry if that sounded rude," Lily said quickly. "It's just, you must work so hard to maintain all this, and a home should be a place where you can relax and be yourself, you know? And you think you can brighten up the house?" The question came out with more skepticism than Jonathan intended. Lily laughed, a genuine musical sound that filled the somber office. "Mr. Carter, I made an 80-year-old man laugh so hard at the diner that he almost choked on his coffee. If I could cheer up Earl Thompson, who's known for being the town's most famous grouch, I think I can handle anything." Despite himself, Jonathan felt one corner of his mouth twitch slightly. There was something refreshing about Lily's disarming honesty, her way of speaking as if they were old acquaintances rather than strangers in a formal interview. "Well, Miss Jefferson," he said, closing the folder with her resume, "the job is Monday through Saturday, 7 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. Weekly pay, no exceptions for late arrivals or poor work. You'd have a 1-week trial period. If it doesn't work out—" "I understand," Lily interrupted. "1 week to prove I can make this place feel more like a home and less like a museum." The way she put it, with humor but without disrespect, made something inside Jonathan's chest tighten in a way he couldn't identify. Maybe it was just curiosity. Or maybe it was the first sign that this woman with the easy smile and apparently open heart was about to turn his carefully controlled world upside down. The next morning, Jonathan woke up before his alarm, a strange restlessness preventing him from sleeping deeply. It was Lily's first day in the house, and he had already devised a plan to test her. After all the others had eventually failed, some stealing small objects, others being negligent with their responsibilities. Lily Jefferson would be no different, he was certain. At 7 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Jonathan watched through the security cameras as Lily walked up the entrance, carrying a small thermal bag and wearing a simple but impeccable uniform. She looked around with the same genuine curiosity as the day before, stopping to observe the flowers in the front garden. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," she said, when he opened the door, her smile as radiant as a spring morning. "I hope you slept well. I brought some blueberry muffins I made last night. Emma helped me so they might have some fingerprints, but I promise they're delicious." Jonathan was momentarily taken aback. No previous housekeeper had ever brought homemade food on the first day. "That wasn't necessary." "I know, but I like to cook, and I thought it would be a nice way to start." Lily extended the thermal bag. "Besides, Emma said that any house needs Mommy's magical muffin touch to become special." Reluctantly, Jonathan accepted the bag, the sweet, homey aroma rising up to him. "Very well. Let me show you around the house and explain your responsibilities." For the next 40 minutes, Jonathan led Lily through each room, meticulously explaining his expectations. She listened attentively, asking practical questions about cleaning products and schedules, but also making comments that caught him off guard. "This living room is beautiful, but it seems like no one ever sits here to actually relax," she observed, lightly touching the back of a leather armchair. "I bet it would be perfect for reading a good book on a rainy afternoon." "I rarely have time to read for pleasure," Jonathan replied dryly. "That's a shame. Reading is like traveling without leaving home. Emma is learning to read now and seeing the world through her eyes. It's magical." There was something about the way Lily talked about her daughter that made Jonathan's chest tighten, a tenderness so genuine it seemed almost painful to witness. After the tour, Jonathan headed to his office, where he had carefully prepared his test. On top of his desk, seemingly casually, he had left $500 in $50 bills, enough money to tempt anyone in financial difficulties. His security cameras would capture everything. "I'm going to work for a while now," he announced, Please start with the living room. Jonathan settled into the leather chair behind his desk, closed his eyes, and controlled his breathing to appear as if he was dozing. For 15 minutes he heard the distant sounds of Lily working, the vacuum being turned on, the soft sound of furniture being moved carefully. Then, the footsteps approached the office. The door opened with an almost inaudible creak. Jonathan kept his eyes closed, his muscles tense despite his relaxed posture. Lily's footsteps were soft on the Persian rug, and he could sense her presence approaching the desk. Jonathan's heart was beating so hard he feared she might hear it. This was always the moment of truth, when the mask fell and true intentions were revealed. He waited for the familiar sound of paper being folded, the whisper of money being tucked into pockets or purses, but the sound that came was completely unexpected. It was almost as if she were smoothing something. Jonathan fought to keep his eyes closed when he heard Lily murmur softly, "Oh, Mr. Carter, money scattered like this attracts bad energy." There was genuine affection in her voice, as if she was speaking to someone she cared about. Jonathan heard the soft sound of paper being handled carefully, but not in the way he expected. Instead of the quick sound of bills being hidden, there was something almost artistic happening. After a few minutes, the footsteps moved away. The door was closed with the same care with which it had been opened. Jonathan waited another 5 minutes before opening his eyes, preparing to confirm his suspicions about yet another dishonest housekeeper. What he saw left him completely paralyzed. The money was still there, all 5 bills, but they had been carefully arranged in the shape of a heart, each bill perfectly aligned with the others. In the center of the arrangement was a small yellow post-it note with delicate handwriting. "Organized money attracts prosperity, boss, L." Jonathan stared at the arrangement for long minutes, unable to fully process what he was seeing. In all his previous tests, the money had either disappeared or at best been ignored, but never ever had it been transformed into something loving. Slowly, he picked up the note, his fingers tracing the handwritten words. There was something so genuinely sweet about the gesture that he felt as if he'd been struck by lightning. The small hand-drawn emoji was imperfect, but it overflowed with personality and human warmth. For the first time in years, Jonathan Carter laughed. It wasn't a controlled or polite laugh. It was a genuine belly laugh that echoed through the silent office and surprised him with its intensity. He couldn't stop. Every time he looked at the heart made of money, another wave of laughter overcame him. "My God," he murmured, wiping away tears he didn't know were falling. "What has this woman done to me?" Jonathan stood up and walked to the window, still holding the note. Outside, he could see Lily through the living room window, humming while she arranged the sofa cushions. She seemed completely oblivious to the emotional earthquake she had caused in her boss. He had spent 5 years building walls around his heart, convincing himself that distrust was wisdom and isolation was safety. And then this woman appeared with her genuine smile and her way of transforming even a test of dishonesty into a gesture of affection. Jonathan carefully folded the note and tucked it into his shirt pocket, close to his heart. For the first time in a long while, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, there were people in the world who still deserved trust. And if Lily Jefferson was one of them, his life was about to change in ways he couldn't even imagine. A week had passed since the Money Heart incident, and Jonathan barely recognized his own house. It was as if Lily had brought with her an invisible magic wand, transforming every corner of the mansion with a contagious joy he hadn't experienced in years. It all started on the second day, when he came down for coffee and found a small note stuck to the Italian espresso machine. "Good morning, Mr. Fancy Coffee. I hope you make the boss's day sweeter today. L." Jonathan had stared at the note for 5 full minutes before realizing he was smiling. On the third day, it was the robot vacuum. Lily had glued 2 toy eyes on it and hung a small sign that read, "Sir Cleanington, Knight of Royal Cleaning." When Jonathan asked about it, she laughed and said, "Well, he works as hard as any of us. He deserves a name and a little recognition, don't you think?" "It's a robot, Lily. It doesn't have feelings." "Ah, but now it has personality," she replied, giving the passing robot an affectionate pat. "And characters with personality work better. Trust me, I know about these things." On the 4th day, Jonathan came downstairs to find the refrigerator transformed. Where there had once been only impeccable stainless steel, there were now small, colorful magnets holding drawings that were clearly made by Emma, motivational messages handwritten by Lily, "You're amazing, even on Mondays," and a small Polaroid photo of Lily and Emma smiling in a park. "Lily," he had begun, his voice carrying the authority he used to intimidate executives. "I didn't authorize decorations on the refrigerator." She stopped folding laundry and looked at him with that sincere expression that always disarmed him. "Oh, sorry, do you want me to take them down? It's just, well, a lifeless refrigerator seems so lonely. And Emma made this drawing especially for you." Jonathan looked more closely at one of the drawings, a stick figure wearing what appeared to be a suit, with a disproportionately large smile and scribbled dark hair. Underneath, in a child's handwriting, it said, "Mr. Carter, thank you for giving my mommy a job." Something melted inside Jonathan's chest. "She made this for me?" "She did. She asked me what the man who was giving me a chance to take better care of her was like. I told her you were kind on the inside, even if you were serious on the outside. So she wanted to thank you in her own way." Jonathan touched the drawing delicately, as if it were made of glass. "You can leave it on the refrigerator." On the 5th day, he found Lily in the kitchen trying to make pancakes, humming a song he didn't recognize. The counter was an absolute mess. Flour scattered everywhere, eggs broken in a bowl, milk spilled. It was the kind of chaos that would normally make him fire a housekeeper immediately. "Lily, what's happening here?" She turned around with flour on her nose and an apologetic smile. "Good morning. Sorry about the mess. I thought I'd make a real breakfast today, but these pancakes are proving more challenging than I imagined." Jonathan looked at the pan, where something that vaguely resembled a pancake was burning. "Have you tried cooking before?" "Of course. Well, scrambled eggs and sandwiches mainly. But how hard can a pancake be?" She laughed at herself. "Apparently harder than I thought." Without knowing exactly why, Jonathan approached the stove. "You're using the heat too high. And you need to wait for bubbles to appear before flipping." "Really? You cook?" "I used to cook. A long time ago." The words came out before he could stop them. "My mother taught me when I was a child." "How sweet. Want to show me?" "I promised to be a good student." Before he realized what he was doing, Jonathan was beside Lily, adjusting the stove temperature and demonstrating how to pour the batter correctly. When their hands accidentally touched as she tried to flip a pancake, he felt an electric current shoot up his arm. "Like this?" asked Lily, focused on the pancake that was turning golden. "Perfect," Jonathan murmured, realizing he wasn't looking at the pancake, but at her delicate profile, at the way she lightly bit her lower lip when she was concentrating. On the 6th day, Jonathan came downstairs and found music playing softly throughout the house. Not classical music or instrumental jazz that he usually listened to, but something cheerful and contemporary that made his feet want to move to the rhythm. "Lily?" he called. "In the living room," came the sung response. He found her dancing lightly while cleaning, using the cleaning brush as a microphone. When she saw him, she stopped immediately, blushing. "Sorry, I clean better with music. I can use headphones if you prefer." "No," said Jonathan quickly. "The music, it's fine. The house seems more alive." And it was true. For the first time in years, his house didn't feel like a mausoleum. It felt like a place where real people lived, laughed, made small messes, and cared about each other. On the 7th day, Saturday, Lily brought Emma to meet him briefly before going to a birthday party. Jonathan was working in his office when he heard giggles coming from the hall. "Mommy, he lives in a princess house," came a high-pitched little voice. "Emma, don't shout. Mr. Carter is working." Jonathan stood up and walked to the entrance, where a small girl with messy braids and a yellow dress was spinning around, observing the high ceiling with pure wonder. "You must be Emma," he said, trying to appear less intimidating. The girl stopped spinning and looked at him with big, curious eyes. "You're Mr. Carter. Mommy said you're very smart and work really hard." "Your mother said that." "Uh-huh. She said you have a good heart, but that maybe you forgot how to use it because you're too busy being important." Jonathan looked at Lily, who was mortified. "Emma, we talked about this." "But it's true, Mommy. And now he's remembering because you're here to remind him." Out of the mouths of babes, Jonathan thought, feeling something warm spread through his chest. Maybe little Emma was right. Maybe he really had forgotten how to use his heart, and maybe Lily was slowly helping him remember. As he watched mother and daughter say goodbye with little kisses and hugs, Jonathan realized that for the first time in 5 years, he didn't want Monday to come. Not because he feared work, but because it would mean Lily wouldn't be there, filling his empty house with laughter, music, and life. And that realization scared him more than any risky business deal he had ever faced. In Lily's second week of work, an unexpected situation would change everything at the Carter mansion. Jonathan was in an important video conference with Japanese investors when he heard the doorbell ringing insistently. Annoyed by the interruption, he paused the meeting for a moment. "Margaret, can you see who it is? I'm not expecting anyone." But it was Lily's voice that responded from the hall, carrying an anxiety Jonathan had never heard before. "Mr. Carter, I need to speak with you. It's urgent." Jonathan quickly excused himself from the investors and left the office to find Lily in the hall, holding the hand of a visibly upset Emma. The girl was wearing her school uniform, but her cheeks were stained with tears and she was clutching a small backpack to her chest. "Lily, what happened?" "Miss Rose had to go to the emergency room. Her sister was in a car accident," Lily explained quickly, her voice trembling. "I don't have anyone else to watch Emma, and I can't miss work. I know this isn't part of the agreement, but could she stay here today? I promise she'll be quiet, that she won't be any trouble." Jonathan looked at Emma, who was watching him with big, hopeful eyes. The girl had clearly been crying, but now seemed more curious than scared. He had never been around children, had never even considered having them. His life was ordered, quiet, predictable. A 6-year-old was the opposite of all that. "Please, Mr. Carter." Emma's little voice was small but full of hope. "I promise to be good. Mommy said you're kind even when you pretend to be serious." Something in Jonathan's chest completely melted. Of course, she can stay. The relief on Lily's face was so intense that for a moment Jonathan thought she was going to cry. "Thank you so much, thank you, thank you. Emma, you heard Mr. Carter. Angel behavior today, okay?" "Okay, Mommy." Emma waved cheerfully as Lily hurried back to work. Jonathan stood in the hall looking at the little girl who was now his temporary responsibility. "Well, are you hungry?" "A little bit. Mommy made a sandwich, but I couldn't eat much at school. I was worried about Miss Rose." "How about we find something in the kitchen?" In the next few minutes, Jonathan found himself doing something he never imagined, preparing a snack for a child. Emma sat on the kitchen island, swinging her little legs and chattering about her school, her teacher, and how Miss Rose always made chocolate cookies that felt like little hugs in your mouth. "Mr. Carter, can I ask you a question?" Emma said while biting a piece of apple. "Sure. Why is your house so quiet? At our house there's always music or mommy singing or me talking to my stuffed animals." The innocent question hit Jonathan like an arrow. "I work a lot. I need silence to concentrate." "But what about when you're not working? Don't you get lonely? Sometimes it's good to be alone." Emma tilted her head, considering this seriously. "Mommy says a little bit of loneliness is good for thinking, but too much loneliness makes your heart sad. Is your heart sad, Mr. Carter?" The brutal honesty of the question left Jonathan speechless. How could a 6-year-old see through all his defenses so easily? "Sometimes," he admitted, surprised by his own honesty. "Then you need more hugs. Hugs heal sad hearts. Mommy taught me that." Before Jonathan could respond, Emma had slipped off the chair and was walking toward the living room. He followed her, intrigued to see what she would do. The tragedy happened in slow motion. Emma was examining a side table where Jonathan kept some of his most valuable objects, including a baccarat crystal vase that had cost over $5,000. She was on her tiptoes, trying to get a better look at a small sculpture, when her elbow knocked into the vase. The sound of crystal shattering on the marble floor echoed through the house like a gunshot. Emma froze for a moment, looking at the scattered pieces, and then began to cry. Not a dramatic cry, but silent tears of pure terror. "I broke it. I broke your pretty thing," she sobbed. "Mommy's going to be so mad, and you're going to send her away, and we won't have money for food." Jonathan's heart broke seeing the child's despair. He knelt beside her, careful to avoid the glass shards. "Emma, look at me." She raised her teary eyes, expecting a scolding. Instead, Jonathan spoke with a gentleness that surprised them both. "You're not in trouble. It was an accident, okay? And your mother isn't going to be sent away because of a broken vase." But it looked really expensive." "It was just a thing, Emma. Things can be replaced, people can't." To his surprise, Jonathan found that he truly believed those words. A week ago, he would have been furious. Now, all he felt was the need to comfort this frightened child. "Want to help me clean up?" he asked. Emma nodded, wiping her nose on her sleeve. Together, they carefully collected the larger pieces of glass. Emma worked with intense seriousness, as if it were the most important task in the world. "Mr. Carter," she said, as they placed the last pieces in a box, "can I make something with the pieces? Mommy taught me that when something breaks, sometimes it can become something even more beautiful." Intrigued, Jonathan nodded. Emma took some of the larger fragments and carefully arranged them in a small bowl she found. With total concentration, she created a small improvised mosaic, positioning each piece of crystal to catch the light in a different way. "Look," she said proudly, "now it's the vase that got back up again. Up. It's not the same as it was before, but it's still beautiful, isn't it?" Jonathan looked at her creation, imperfect, full of childish enthusiasm, but somehow touching in a way the original vase never had been. "It's beautiful, Emma. Much more beautiful than before." When Lily came to pick her up at the end of the day, she found Jonathan and Emma sitting on the living room floor, putting together a puzzle he had found in some forgotten closet. Emma was excitedly explaining each piece, and Jonathan, ruthless CEO of a billion-dollar empire, was listening to every word as if it were the most fascinating thing in the world. "How did things go?" Lily asked hesitantly. "Emma is wonderful company," said Jonathan, and he truly meant it. "She taught me some important things today." As he watched mother and daughter say goodbye, Jonathan realized that something fundamental had changed inside him. A 6-year-old had accomplished in a few hours what years of therapy and self-reflection hadn't managed. She had shown him that it was possible to love without fear, trust without guarantees, and that sometimes the most beautiful things in life came exactly from the most imperfect moments. And for the first time in a long while, Jonathan Carter didn't feel alone in his big, quiet house. 3 weeks after the day Emma broke the vase, life at the Carter mansion had established a rhythm that Jonathan could never have imagined. For the first time in years, he found himself eagerly anticipating weekends, not to rest, but because it meant more time to observe the contagious joy that Lily brought to every corner of the house. That Thursday morning, everything changed when Lily didn't show up at her usual time. By 7:15, Jonathan was genuinely worried. By 7:30, he was pacing back and forth in his office. Lily was never late. The phone rang at 8 in the morning. "Mr. Carter!" Lily's voice was hoarse and clearly sick. "I'm so sorry to call so late. Emma and I caught a terrible flu. She was up all night with a fever, and I'm not much better. I really can't come to work today." "Of course not," said Jonathan immediately, surprising himself with the speed of his response. "You need to take care of yourself and Emma. Don't worry about work. But I hate missing work. I never miss work, and I know you have that important meeting today." "Lily, stop." The concern in his voice was genuine. "Your health and Emma's are more important than any meeting. Do you have everything you need? Medicine, food?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Jonathan heard what sounded like a muffled sob. We'll be okay. Thank you for understanding, Mr. Carter." After hanging up the phone, Jonathan couldn't concentrate on anything. During the meeting with the directors, his mind constantly wandered to Lily and Emma sick in their small apartment. He imagined Emma with a fever asking for her mother, and Lily trying to care for her daughter while feeling terrible herself. Around noon, Jonathan did something completely out of character. He cancelled all his afternoon meetings. "Margaret, I need to leave. Reschedule everything for tomorrow." "Mr. Carter, you never cancel meetings. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine. I just need to take care of something important." 40 minutes later, Jonathan was standing in front of a small apartment building on the less affluent side of town, carrying 2 heavy bags. He had stopped at the grocery store, the pharmacy, and even a toy store, buying everything he imagined they might need. When Lily opened the door to apartment 3B, she looked even smaller than usual. Wrapped in a worn bathrobe with disheveled hair. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she was clearly struggling to stay on her feet. Mr. Carter? Her voice was a hoarse whisper of shock. What are you doing here? I brought some things, he said, lifting the bags. May I come in? Lily stepped aside, visibly embarrassed by the state of the apartment. It was small but clean, decorated with used furniture that was lovingly cared for. Emma's drawings covered the walls, and there were photos of the two of them smiling scattered everywhere. It was modest, but there was more warmth in that tiny space than in Jonathan's entire mansion. How's Emma? He asked, placing the bags on the small kitchen table. Sleeping, finally. Her fever came down a little this morning, but she's still pretty weak. Lily watched him take items out of the bags: canned soup, tea, fever medicine, juice, crackers. Mr. Carter, you didn't need to... This must have cost... Don't worry about the cost. He continued unpacking, including a small teddy bear. I thought Emma might like to have something new to hug while she recovers. Tears began streaming down Lily's face. I don't know what to say. No one has ever taken care of us like this. Jonathan turned and saw her crying, and something inside him shattered. Without thinking, he approached and gently touched her shoulder. Hey, it's okay. It's what friends do, right? The word friends hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that neither dared examine too closely. Mommy? A weak little voice came from what must have been the bedroom. Who are you talking to? It's Mr. Carter, sweetheart. He came to visit us. Emma appeared in the bedroom doorway, wearing unicorn pajamas and holding a worn blanket. She looked small and vulnerable, but her eyes lit up when she saw Jonathan. Mr. Carter, you came to see us. Her voice was hoarse but full of genuine joy. Of course I did. How are you feeling, little one? Better now that you're here. Mommy said you're too busy to visit regular people. Jonathan looked at Lily, who was mortified. Emma? I never said that. Well, Emma, said Jonathan, kneeling down to the girl's height, it turns out you two are the most important people I know, and important people deserve visits when they're sick. Emma's eyes widened. We're important to you? The innocent question hit Jonathan like a punch to the stomach. When was the last time someone had asked if they were important to him? When was the last time he had actually mattered to someone? Very important, he said, his voice softer than it had ever been. Do you want to stay for dinner? Mommy always makes the best mac and cheese when we're sick. Jonathan looked at Lily, who seemed ready to faint from embarrassment. Emma, Mr. Carter probably has important things to do. Actually, interrupted Jonathan, surprising everyone, including himself, mac and cheese sounds perfect, but how about I cook today? You both need to rest. And that's how Jonathan Carter, billionaire CEO, spent the evening in a small kitchen, preparing soup from a can and making toast, with a 6-year-old as his chief assistant and a sick but radiant woman watching from the couch. Mr. Carter, Emma said when they were all sitting around the tiny table, you're different here. Different how? More happy. Your eyes smile along with your mouth. Lily gently touched Emma's hand. Emma, don't ask personal questions. It's okay, said Jonathan. She's right. I am happier here. As he helped put Emma to bed later that night, the girl held his hand with her small, warm fingers. Mr. Carter, can you be my friend forever? Forever, he promised. And for the first time in his adult life, he really meant it. When he was saying goodbye at the door, Lily held his arm. Thank you for everything. You didn't have to do this, but... Lily, he said, turning to face her. I wanted to do this. You two, you make me want to be a better person. In that moment, standing in the dimly lit hallway of the small apartment, something passed between them. An understanding, a connection that went beyond employer and employee. Jonathan felt the urge to touch her, to say words he didn't yet know how to form, but instead he simply smiled and said, Rest, and don't worry about coming back until you're both completely well. As he drove back to his empty mansion, Jonathan realized that for the first time in 5 years, he didn't feel alone. He had found something he didn't even know he was looking for, a family, and now he needed to figure out how not to lose it. 2 weeks after the night at Lily's apartment, Jonathan had become a person he barely recognized in the mirror. He came home eager to hear Emma's stories from the day, to see Lily humming around the house, to participate in the small rituals that had become precious. Breakfast together, playing in the garden on weekends, the movies they watched in the living room after Emma fell asleep in his lap. It was during one of those perfect moments, an impromptu picnic in the mansion's garden on a sunny Saturday, that everything fell apart. Jonathan was helping Emma fly a colourful kite while Lily arranged the checkered blanket they had spread on the grass. Emma's laughter echoed through the garden when she managed to make the kite soar high, and Jonathan felt his heart expand in a way he had never experienced before. "Look, Mommy, Mr. Carter taught the kite to dance in the sky," Emma shouted, running toward them with her arms open. Jonathan caught her in his arms, spinning her around while she laughed. "You're the excellent teacher, little one. The kite just needed someone brave to show it the way." Lily watched them with that radiant smile that made Jonathan's world seem brighter. "You two are perfect together," she said, and there was something in her voice, a tenderness, a suggestion of something deeper, that made Jonathan's heart race. None of them noticed the telephoto lens hidden among the trees across the street. The storm began Monday morning. Jonathan was drinking coffee when Margaret called, her voice tense in a way he rarely heard. "Mr. Carter, you need to see the news, now." When Jonathan turned on the television, he felt the blood freeze in his veins. The screen showed photos of him, Lily and Emma at the picnic. Intimate images that had been taken without permission, but that told a story the media was eager to exploit. "Billionaire Jonathan Carter in secret romance with housekeeper," screamed the headline. "New girlfriend has daughter by unknown father." The presenter continued with a malicious smile. "Exclusive photos show well-known businessman Jonathan Carter, CEO of Carter Enterprises, in an intimate moment with his housekeeper, Lily Jefferson, and her 6-year-old daughter. Sources close to the Carter family have expressed concern about this controversial relationship." Jonathan turned off the TV, his hands trembling with rage. His phone was already ringing incessantly. Reporters, company board members, his family. He ignored all the calls except one. "Jonathan," it was his sister Caroline's voice, loaded with disapproval. "What are you doing? The photos are everywhere. You're destroying the family's reputation over a housekeeper with an illegitimate daughter." "Caroline, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You're having a midlife crisis and got involved with the first woman who gave you attention. This is embarrassing, Jonathan, for all of us." Before Jonathan could respond, the line went dead. In the following minutes, similar messages arrived from other family members, company executives, and even some longtime friends. They all said essentially the same thing. He was making a terrible mistake that would tarnish his reputation forever. The worst moment came when Lily called, her voice broken and full of tears. "Mr. Carter, I saw the news. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to happen. I'll hand in my resignation today. Emma and I are going to move out of the city. We don't want to cause any more problems." "Lily, no." The strength in his own voice surprised Jonathan. "Don't do anything rash. I'll fix this." "How? They're saying horrible things about me, about Emma, calling me a gold digger, saying Emma is a problem child. How can you fix this?" Jonathan closed his eyes, feeling the pain in her voice as if it were physical. "Trust me. Please, just trust me." That afternoon, Jonathan did something he hadn't done in years. He called a spontaneous press conference. Margaret tried to dissuade him. David Richardson begged him to reconsider, but Jonathan was resolute. When he entered the Carter Enterprises conference room, dozens of reporters stood up, cameras flashing, recorders being turned on. Jonathan walked to the podium with the upright posture that had intimidated countless business adversaries. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press," he began, his voice clear and firm. "You published photos of me with Lily Jefferson and her daughter Emma. Allow me to clarify some things." The silence in the room was absolute. "First, Lily Jefferson is not just my housekeeper. She is one of the most honest, hard-working and decent people I have ever met. In a world full of people who wear masks and hide their true intentions, she is authentic, and that is rare." Murmurs began to spread through the room, but Jonathan continued. "Second, her daughter Emma is an extraordinary child, intelligent, kind, and full of joy. Any attempt to characterize this girl negatively is not only false, but despicable." A reporter raised his hand. Mr. Carter, but are you admitting to a romantic relationship with your housekeeper? Jonathan stopped, the weight of the question hanging in the air. For a moment the room was so quiet that the sound of the air conditioning seemed deafening. This was his chance to deny everything, to protect his public image, to return to the safe, lonely life he had built. Instead, he thought of Lily humming while she cooked, of Emma sleeping in his lap during a movie, of the warmth he felt every time he came home and heard their laughter echoing through the hallways. "I am admitting," he said clearly, "that Lily and Emma Jefferson have changed my life in ways I didn't even know were possible. I am admitting that I prefer to trust someone honest and simple rather than people who wear masks every day, and I am admitting that they are my choice." The room exploded in noise, shouted questions, cameras flashing frantically, but Jonathan raised his hand for silence. "You can question my personal decisions as much as you want. You can speculate about my motives. You can analyze every photo you took without permission. But I will not allow you to tarnish the reputation of two innocent people who have only brought light to my life." He paused, looking directly at the cameras. "My greatest legacy is not the buildings I've constructed or the companies I've created. It's the people I choose to love and protect. And Lily and Emma Jefferson are that choice." With that, Jonathan left the podium and walked out of the room, ignoring the shouted questions behind him. He had burned bridges, defied expectations, and possibly ruined relationships that had taken decades to build. But for the first time in years, he felt completely free. When he arrived home that night, he found Lily waiting for him in the living room, Emma asleep in her lap. Her eyes were red from crying, but there was something new in her expression, a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and something deeper that made Jonathan's heart almost stop. "Did you really say all that?" she whispered. "On national TV?" "Every word." "Why?" Jonathan approached, kneeling beside the armchair where she sat. Gently, he touched Emma's sleeping face, then looked into Lily's eyes. "Because you two are worth more than any reputation. Because for the first time in my life, I found something real. And I'm not going to let anyone take that away from me." Tears began streaming down Lily's face again, but this time they were tears of relief, gratitude, and perhaps something that looked very much like love. 3 weeks after the press conference, life had found a new rhythm at the Carter mansion. The media had moved on to other scandals, but Jonathan's words had echoed far beyond the headlines. Interview requests arrived from magazines wanting to tell the real love story. Invitations to charity events appeared addressed to Mr. Carter and family, and for the first time in years, Jonathan received calls from people genuinely curious about his happiness, rather than just interested in his business. It was Margaret who brought the invitation that would change everything. "Mr. Carter," she said, entering the office with a peculiar expression, "an invitation arrived for the annual Children's Hope Foundation charity ball. They would like you to be the keynote speaker this time." Jonathan looked at the elegant invitation with its gold lettering on cream paper. Usually I just make a donation and don't attend these events." "Well, sir, they specifically mentioned they'd like to hear about your new perspective on family and community." At that moment, Lily entered with a coffee tray as she did every afternoon. But Jonathan noticed she still felt a bit shy around him since the press conference, as if she didn't know exactly how to behave now that the whole world knew about her importance in his life. "Lily," he said impulsively, "how would you feel about going to a formal event with me as my date?" The tray nearly slipped from Lily's hands. What? It's a charity ball. Formal attire, fancy dinner, some important people wanting to meet the woman who managed to tame the feared Jonathan Carter." He smiled, trying to appear casual despite the nervousness he felt. "What do you think?" Lily set the tray on the table with trembling hands. "Jonathan, I don't know how to waltz. I don't have an appropriate dress. I don't know how to talk to important people." "You talk to me every day," he said softly, "and I'm supposedly an important person. It's different. With you, I can be myself. At these events, people will judge me. They'll look for reasons to prove I don't belong in your world." Jonathan stood up and walked over to her. "Lily, look at me." When she raised her eyes, he saw all the fear and insecurity she was trying to hide. "You don't need to belong to my world. You created a new world, our world. and I'd like to show people how beautiful this place you built is." 2 hours later, they were at an elegant boutique downtown. Jonathan had insisted, despite Lily's protests about the cost. The saleswoman, an elegant French woman named Madame Dubois, took command of the situation with military efficiency. "Ah, oui," she said, studying Lily with experienced eyes. "I see exactly what she needs. Natural elegance, non? Nothing too flashy. Let her shine for herself." When Lily came out of the dressing room wearing the third dress, a navy blue number that subtly hugged her curves and brought a special sparkle to her eyes, Jonathan completely forgot how to breathe. "How is it?" asked Lily, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "Perfect," he murmured, and had to clear his throat to repeat louder. "Absolutely perfect." On the night of the event, Jonathan was more nervous than at any business presentation he had ever given. He had hired a driver to pick up Lily, wanting to make everything perfect for her. When she appeared on the staircase of his house, since Emma was sleeping in the guest room to be watched by a babysitter, Jonathan felt his world stop. The navy blue dress highlighted every elegant curve. Her hair was pulled back in a sophisticated bun that left her delicate neck exposed, and she wore the pearl earrings he had insisted on giving as a gift. But what really mesmerized him was the way she smiled. Nervous but confident, beautiful in a way that transcended any clothing or jewelry. "You look stunning," he said, offering his arm. The ball was being held at the city's most exclusive hotel. When they entered the ballroom, Jonathan felt all eyes turned to them. Whispers followed their steps as they walked through the elegant crowd. "Everyone is staring," Lily murmured, squeezing his arm. "Because you're the most beautiful woman in the room," he replied, and meant every word. But Jonathan underestimated Lily Jefferson. After a few minutes of initial nervousness, something from her waitressing training, years of talking to people of all kinds, took over. When a senator's wife commented on her jewelry, Lily laughed and said, "Thank you. Jonathan has excellent taste, but I told him if he bought anything too expensive, Emma and I would use it to play princesses." The disarming honesty made the woman laugh genuinely. When a bank executive made a condescending comment about people from humble backgrounds, Lily responded with a grace that Jonathan could never have taught. "You're right, I do come from humble beginnings, but I learned that humility is a luxury that many wealthy people can't afford." During dinner, Jonathan was called to give his speech. He went up to the podium, looking at the sea of expectant faces. His prepared speech was in his pocket, but when his eyes found Lily at the front table smiling encouragingly, he completely forgot the text. "I prepared a speech tonight about philanthropy and social responsibility," he began. "But when I look at you, I can only think of one thing: what family really means." Murmurs of interest ran through the room. "A year ago, I believed family was about lineage, about maintaining traditions, about preserving legacies. But I recently learned that family is about the people who make you want to be better. It's about someone who sees the best in you when you've forgotten that side existed." His eyes never left Lily, who had tears glistening in her eyes. "True wealth isn't in the numbers in my bank account. It's in the laughter of a 6-year-old who taught me that hugs heal sad hearts. It's in the smile of a woman who transforms a house into a home simply by being in it." The silence in the room was absolute. "So my donation tonight isn't just for this foundation's excellent programs. It's a thank you for reminding me that sometimes the most beautiful families aren't the ones we're born into, but the ones we choose to build." The applause was deafening, but Jonathan only had eyes for Lily, who was crying openly now. Later, in the hotel garden under party lights and stars, they walked slowly along the illuminated paths. The orchestra's music came softly through the open windows. "Jonathan," Lily said softly, stopping near an ornate fountain, "can I ask you something?" "Anything. What do you really want from me? From us?" The question he had been avoiding, the conversation he knew they needed to have. Jonathan took her hands in his, feeling how small and warm they were. "I want," he began, then stopped, searching for the right words. "Lily, 5 years ago I built walls around my heart because I thought it would protect me. But you and Emma didn't climb those walls. You simply knocked them down with kindness." He took a deep breath, preparing for the biggest risk of his life. "I don't want you to just be my housekeeper, Lily. I want you and Emma in my life, forever. as family, as everything. Tears were streaming down Lily's face now, but she was smiling through them. "Are you sure? Because we're not sophisticated like the people in your world. Emma asks embarrassing questions in public. I burn toast half the time, and sometimes I swear when I hurt myself." Jonathan laughed, pulling her closer. "Lily Jefferson, you are perfect exactly as you are, and Emma is perfect exactly as she is. And I love you. I love you both more than I thought it was possible to love anything." "Are you sure?" she whispered. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." When he kissed her there under the stars and golden lights of the garden, Jonathan knew he had found his true home. It wasn't an expensive mansion or a business empire. It was the heart of the woman in his arms and the smile of the little girl waiting for them at home. And for the first time in his adult life, Jonathan Carter was exactly where he belonged. A year later, Jonathan woke up not to the shrill sound of his alarm clock, but to giggles coming from the hallway. He smiled before even opening his eyes completely, recognizing the soundtrack that had become his favorite. Emma trying to wake Lily by whispering too loudly, followed by his wife's sleepy voice trying to negotiate 5 more minutes of sleep. Wife. Even after 6 months of marriage, the word still made his heart race. "Daddy Jonathan." Emma's voice echoed through the hallway, followed by the sound of little bare feet running on marble. "Mommy said you're going to teach us how to make butterfly-shaped pancakes today." Jonathan sat up in bed as Emma burst into the room, her brown hair an adorable mess and wearing the unicorn pajamas he had bought for her the week before. It still amazed him how his heart expanded every time she called him Daddy Jonathan, a title she had started using spontaneously, and that meant more to him than any business award he had ever received. "Butterfly pancakes. That sounds like quite a challenge," he said, picking her up. "Are you sure I'm qualified for this mission?" "Of course you are. You're the best at everything." Emma kissed his cheek with the absolute confidence that only children possess. Lily appeared in the bedroom doorway, hair loose falling over her shoulders, wearing one of the silk robes Jonathan had insisted on buying for her. Even after all this time together, the sight of her still made him forget how to breathe. "Sorry," she said, with that morning smile that had become his personal religion. "Someone woke up determined that today was special pancake day." "Someone," said Jonathan, tickling Emma, clearly inherited the determination gene from her mother. The mansion's kitchen had completely transformed over the past year. Where untouchable perfection once reigned, there was now real life. Emma's drawings stuck to the refrigerator with colorful magnets, a cookie jar always full on the counter, spices that Lily had organized according to her own logic, the ones that make food happy go together, and flour stains that stubbornly appeared no matter how many times they cleaned. "Okay, team," Jonathan announced with exaggerated seriousness, tying on an apron that said, "Chef of the Heart, Emma's Father's Day gift." Operation Butterfly Pancake is officially underway. What followed was organized chaos filled with love. Jonathan tried to shape the batter into butterfly form, while Emma helped by adding colorful drops of food coloring that Lily had secretly bought. Lily supervised everything, laughing when Jonathan inevitably splattered batter on his expensive shirt. "Daddy Jonathan, this butterfly looks more like a flying dinosaur," Emma observed, studying one of the less successful creations. "Ah, but you see," said Jonathan with fake seriousness, "that's a butterfly dinosaur, very rare, probably extinct for millions of years." "You're making that up," Emma laughed, covered in flour from head to toe. "Maybe," Jonathan admitted, picking her up to clean her off. "But making up stories with you is one of my favorite activities." While they ate the pancakes, which actually turned out delicious despite their questionable shape, Emma asked the question that had become a morning ritual. "What are you going to do that's special today?" "Well," said Lily, exchanging a glance with Jonathan, "your daddy Jonathan has an important meeting this afternoon." "A meeting?" Emma frowned. "But it's Saturday." "This one is different," Jonathan explained. "It's with people who want to hear about how a family can change everything in someone's life." It was true. In recent months, Jonathan had received numerous invitations to speak about leadership, about finding balance between personal and professional life, about the importance of genuinely connecting with people. His story with Lily and Emma had become something of a legend in the corporate world, the billionaire CEO who discovered that true success wasn't measured in dollars, but in smiles at breakfast. "Can I go with you?" Emma asked hopefully. "This one is just for adults, sweetheart," said Lily. "But how about if we go to the park and then make cookies for when he gets back?" "Can I make heart-shaped cookies for Daddy Jonathan?" "Of course you can, little one," said Jonathan, feeling that familiar wave of emotion that Emma always provoked in him. Later that afternoon, Jonathan was at the podium of a convention center, looking at an audience of CEOs, executives, and entrepreneurs. His speech was prepared, but as always happened lately, the words that came out were straight from the heart. "2 years ago," he began, "I measured my success by the numbers on my balance sheet. Today, I measure it by the number of times my daughter laughs during breakfast." Interested murmurs ran through the audience. You might be wondering how I arrived at this radical transformation. The answer is simple. I stopped trying to control everything and started letting love in. He clicked the remote control, and a photo appeared on the screen behind him. Him, Lily, and Emma in the mansion's garden, covered in paint, because Emma had decided they needed an artistic renovation of the fence. This photo was taken 3 weeks ago. I had just closed a $50 million deal, but what made me happiest that day was my daughter telling me I had the best smile in the world, even with green paint on my nose. Laughter echoed through the audience. My greatest legacy isn't Carter Enterprises. It's not the buildings I've constructed or the companies I've acquired. It's the family I chose to love and who taught me that true leadership starts at home, with the people who know us when we take off our ties and are just human. When Jonathan arrived home that night, he found a scene he would never tire of seeing. Emma was sleeping in Lily's lap on the living room couch, both covered by a blanket that Emma had insisted on calling the family magic blanket. The TV was playing a Disney movie that had clearly been abandoned in favor of a collective nap. Jonathan approached quietly and kissed Lily's forehead, who woke up with a sleepy smile. "How was the speech?" she whispered. "Perfect, but coming home was even better. Emma made the promised cookies. They're in the kitchen, along with a special drawing for you." Jonathan went to the kitchen and found a tray of heart-shaped cookies and a new drawing taped to the refrigerator. It was a family of 3 stick figures, smiling, with the words, "My perfect family," written in colorful crayon. When he returned to the living room, Lily had moved to make room on the couch. He sat down, pulling her closer, while Emma continued sleeping between them. "You know," Jonathan murmured, kissing the top of Lily's head, "I used to think I had built an empire, but now I realize I was just gathering stones. This is what I really built. This is my true kingdom." Lily looked at him with those eyes that had changed his life forever. "And what's the first rule of your kingdom, Your Majesty?" Jonathan smiled, looking at Emma sleeping peacefully, and then at the woman in his arms. "That love always wins. Always." And in the mansion that was no longer cold and silent, but full of laughter, music, and life, Jonathan Carter finally understood what it meant to be truly home. 2 years after the wedding, on a spring morning that promised to be another one of those perfect mornings that had become the norm at the Carter house, Jonathan woke up to the familiar sound he had learned to love more than any symphony, Emma humming softly while trying to make some secret surprise. It was 7 in the morning on a Sunday, and through the bedroom door left ajar, he could hear the whispered conversation between Emma, now 8 years old, and Lily in the kitchen. "Are you sure he'll like it, Mummy?" "I'm sure, sweetheart. Daddy Jonathan loves everything you make for him." Jonathan smiled, stretching in the king-size bed he now shared with the woman of his dreams. Over the past 2 years, his life had transformed in ways he could never have imagined when he was that lonely, distrustful man who tested housekeepers with cruel traps. The mansion had become a true home. Every corner bore marks of the family they had built together, photos of the 3 of them on trips, Emma's drawings framed on the walls, plants that Lily insisted on keeping. Houses need to breathe, Jonathan, and that indescribable atmosphere of love that transformed cold marble into cozy warmth. "Daddy Jonathan!" Emma burst into the room carrying a tray that was clearly too heavy for her, but which she balanced with iron determination. "Surprise!" Jonathan sat up in bed, pretending to be more surprised than he actually was. "Emma, what's all this?" "Breakfast in bed. Mommy helped me, but I made the special scrambled eggs and toasted the bread exactly how you like it." Emma carefully placed the tray on his lap, beaming with pride. Lily appeared in the doorway, wearing a floral dress that made her look like a ray of morning sunshine. Even after all these years together, Jonathan still felt his heart race when he saw her. "Someone decided today was the day to spoil Daddy Jonathan," she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "And what's the special occasion?" asked Jonathan, tasting the scrambled eggs that were surprisingly perfect. Emma exchanged a conspiratorial look with Lily before answering. "Well, I was thinking—" "Oh no," Jonathan joked. "When you start with, 'I was thinking,' it usually means I'm going to have to build a treehouse or buy a pony." "It's nothing like that," Emma laughed, but then became serious in a way that made Jonathan's heart tighten. "It's just that at school everyone has brothers or sisters, and I was thinking that maybe it would be nice if I had one too." The silence that followed was charged with emotion. Jonathan looked at Lily, seeing the blush rise in her cheeks, and then looked back at Emma, who was watching him with those big, hopeful eyes. "A brother or sister?" Jonathan repeated carefully. "Uh-huh. Someone I could teach things to, you know, like you and Mommy teach me, and someone to play with when you're busy being adults." Jonathan felt something warm expand in his chest, a sensation that had become familiar since Emma and Lily entered his life, but which still surprised him with its intensity. "And what do you think, Mommy?" he asked, pulling Lily closer. Lily looked at him with that shy smile he had learned to recognize as a sign that she was thinking something important. "Well, I think our family is already perfect the way it is, but, Jonathan encouraged, "but maybe it could become even more perfect," Lily finished, blushing even more. Emma clapped her hands. "Does that mean you're going to try?" Jonathan laughed, pulling the two women of his life into a collective hug. "It means we're going to talk about it, like a family does." "Can I choose the name?" Emma asked immediately. "Let's take it slow, little one," said Lily, laughing. "First we have to see if this is really going to happen." During the rest of the morning, as they prepared lunch together in the kitchen, a Sunday tradition that Jonathan had learned to value more than any business meeting, the conversation about the possibility of expanding the family continued naturally and lovingly. "If it's a boy, can I call him Daniel?" suggested Emma, stirring the cake batter they were making. "Daniel is a beautiful name," agreed Jonathan. "And if it's a girl, Sophia, or maybe Isabella, or—" Emma stopped stirring with a thoughtful expression. "Actually, how about we let the baby choose when it grows up a little?" Lily and Jonathan exchanged an amused look. Even at 8 years old, Emma managed to surprise them with her innocent wisdom. That afternoon, after Emma went out to play in the garden, Jonathan and Lily found themselves sitting on the porch swing, a recent addition that Emma had requested because every perfect family needs a place to talk about important things. "Are you really considering this?" asked Lily, nestling against his chest. "Aren't you?" he replied, kissing the top of her head. "Jonathan Carter, 3 years ago, you were a man who could barely trust a housekeeper. And now you're willing to have another child?" Jonathan laughed, thinking about the incredible journey that had brought them there. "Lily Jefferson Carter, 3 years ago I was a man who thought love was a weakness and family was an obligation. Now I understand that they are the only thing that really matters." They sat in silence for a moment, watching Emma play in the garden. She had set up an elaborate picnic for her stuffed animals and was serving imaginary tea with total seriousness. "She would be an incredible big sister," Lily murmured. "And you would be an incredible mother, as again," said Jonathan. "Actually, you already are." That night, after Emma went to bed, not without first making Jonathan promise they would talk more about the Little Brother Project, as she had started calling it, Jonathan found himself in his old office, now transformed into a mix of home office and playroom, with a smaller desk for Emma to do homework while he worked. He opened the bottom drawer of the desk and took out a photo he kept there. That old photo of him with Marcus, the friend who had betrayed him so many years ago. For a long moment, he looked at the two young men smiling in the photo, remembering the pain and anger that betrayal had caused. "Thank you, Marcus," he whispered to the photo. "I know it wasn't your intention, but you taught me to value what really matters when I finally found it." He put the photo back in the drawer, not with bitterness, but with a kind of strange gratitude. Every difficult experience in his life had led him exactly to where he needed to be. "Jonathan," Lily's voice came from the doorway, "is everything okay?" He turned and saw her standing there wearing a simple nightgown, hair loose, no makeup, and still the most beautiful sight he had ever beheld. "Everything is perfect," he said, standing up to hug her. "I was just thinking about how lucky I am." "We are lucky," she corrected, kissing him softly. When they went up to the bedroom that night, Jonathan looked around the house that had become a true home. He could hear Emma humming softly in her room, saw the family photos scattered on the tables, smelled the candles that Lily always lit, and realized he had found something he didn't even know he was looking for. "Lily," he said as they lay down, pulling her into his arms, "what would you say if I told you I want to give Emma the little brother she wants?" Lily looked at him with those eyes that had changed his life forever. "I'd say that Jonathan Carter continues to surprise me every day." "Is that a yes?" "It's a let's try," she said, smiling, "but without rushing. We have time, we have love, and we have Emma to remind us that the perfect family isn't about numbers, but about connected hearts." Jonathan kissed her then slowly, deeply thinking about how the heart that was once frozen now pulsed with so much love it sometimes hurt. He thought about Emma, sleeping in the next room, perhaps dreaming of the little brother who might come. He thought about the future they were building together, one day at a time, one smile at a time, one hug at a time. And for the first time in his entire life, Jonathan Carter was exactly where he belonged. At home with his family, with his heart finally warmed by the true love he had learned to accept and return. Outside, spring continued to bloom in the garden, promising new beginnings, just as the Carter family continued to grow in love, promising a future full of laughter, discoveries, and the simple magic of truly belonging to someone. Sometimes the greatest transformations begin with the smallest gestures. Jonathan Carter discovered that a heart made of money by caring hands could be worth more than an entire empire. He learned that true wealth wasn't in the numbers in his bank account, but in the laughter of a girl who called him Daddy Jonathan, and in the smile of a woman who transformed his cold house into a home full of love. In a world where trust seems impossible, where loneliness disguised as success is the norm, Jonathan found his redemption in the most unlikely place, in the pure heart of someone who had nothing to hide. Because in the end, we are all just looking for someone who can see our soul through the masks we wear. And perhaps deep down, this story speaks to each one of us too. If this story touched you, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments, where are you listening to this message from? Your support is what allows us to continue bringing stories that warm the heart and remind us of what really matters in life.